Far more than we think. Making Sense of Spirituality by Angelo. Chapter 12. Let It Be. We have now gathered enough pieces of the jigsaw to begin to fit them together and start seeing the first part of the picture emerge. The combination of Chapter 9, No Such Thing as Normal, Chapter 10, Perfect Balance, and Chapter 11, There is no comparison, and an understanding of the cycle of the mind, brings about the simple idea that acceptance is one of the basic and crucial ingredients of spiritual growth. Quote, "Whisper words of wisdom, let it be." Close quote. Paul McCartney. The difficult part in letting it be is deciding which things to accept and which things to try to do something about. For example, we often moan about the weather, but we know there's nothing we can do about it. We can make contingency plans and dress accordingly, but the weather will do as it pleases and we simply have to accept it. Alternatively, there are decisions that we can make about our own lives that do not depend on anyone or anything else. This brings us to the Serenity Prayer, which is widely used in 12-step recovery programs. Quote, "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." Close quote by Reinhold Niebuhr. When I first heard these words, I thought they made a great deal of sense. We may as well accept the things we cannot change, with the obvious example being the weather. We also often need courage to change the things we find acceptable. And finally, the wisdom to know which things to accept and which things to change is clearly desirable, although to be honest, I thought I already knew the difference. As my spiritual journey continues, I look back at these words and my early interpretation of them, and I marvel at how my own ego blinded me from seeing the underlying wisdom. Serenity and courage are fine attributes to have, but the real prize is the wisdom to know the difference. As my spirituality grows and my ego diminishes, I see with increasing clarity that the only thing that I can change is myself. I used to think I could manipulate everything about my life to my advantage, but now I see that people, places and things are all ultimately beyond my control. Whatever my plans might be, there's always the potential that something unexpected may happen that prevents my intended outcome from occurring. Sometimes things do go as I plan, and this creates the illusion that I'm in control, but in truth, anything could have happened. This feeling of being out of control can be quite scary at first, but actually nothing has changed other than our perspective. We imagine that we're in control of our lives, but the truth is, events can and do occur that can turn our lives upside down. This fresh perspective of lack of real control can lead us to be more accepting. We know from the cycle of the mind that a broader perspective will change our perceptions and eventually lead to a more positive experience of life. This all sounds good in theory, but can we really accept all the things in life that we previously found so unacceptable? Can we simply focus on changing ourselves? Surely that must be selfish and irresponsible. If everyone behaved like that, would not the world be in a complete mess? Is not acceptance of the unacceptable a sign of weakness and a convenient escape from facing reality. It is surely not acceptable to accept this. These thoughts are all understandable, but they don't help us change. The power of acceptance is going to take some explaining, but I'm going to persist because it underpins all that follows. Many spiritual principles appear at first to be paradoxes, but they do make sense once we become aware of the bigger picture. Our existing beliefs are so ingrained in our egos that we will reject alternative ideas as a matter of course and miss the opportunity for deeper understanding. So let's go back over the pieces of the jigsaw that make up this part of the picture. We've seen that we are 99.9999% energy and that we exist as spiritual beings as well as physical bodies and minds. We see that our spirits are all connected and that it's our egos that maintain the illusion of separation. We understand the cycle of the mind and begin to accept that we can change our thoughts, emotions and behaviours if we choose to do so, and we can thereby change our own realities. We have the ability to choose. The idea of normality recedes once we embrace our uniqueness and the enormous potential for variety that exists. Being abnormal is not only acceptable, it's the whole point of life. The universe is already in perfect balance, and there's no requirement for us to fix or change anything. Our judgment of others is self-righteous, when in reality we're all comprised of the spectrum of good and bad. Freedom of choice means we can all choose which parts of us we wish to express. If someone really is free to choose, then it's not our place to then judge the choices that person makes. If underlying truths were universally known, we would be far less likely to judge. We may not know the exact underlying truths in any circumstance, but we can at least acknowledge that they do exist. We can then simply accept things as they are and focus on being more loving ourselves, whatever happens. And finally, we've seen the futility of comparing ourselves to others and constantly striving for future success and happiness. Accepting our lives as they are and moving our priorities away from the cart and more towards the horse is far more worthwhile. If spirituality were more widely embraced in the world, many more people would act out of love rather than fear. This is, however, a slow process, which is gradually unfolding. All we can do is let things be and seek to play our own small part. Serenity comes from accepting the world as it is, with all its beauty and ugliness. Courage is needed to accept our own individuality, to step away from the crowd and to engage in personal spiritual growth. Wisdom comes to those who see through the apparent paradox and embrace their own potential. Acceptance brings peace of mind. The ego will never accept things as they are, but the spirit will. Acceptance is a key stepping stone in spiritual growth, and the two things reinforce each other. The more we accept, the more spiritual we become, and the more spiritual our lives become, the more we are able to accept. To make a start, all we have to do is to let it be. One way to do that is to be grateful for what we already have in our lives. We can adopt the attitude of gratitude.